Le Mans Ultimate is coming in hot with the new DLC update. Studio 397 and Motorsports Games have provided me a key for early access, so I could check it out. But first of all, a big thank you to all subscribers and members for their continued support. It wouldn't be possible without you. Anyways, let's start with the big elephant in the room, which I've already explored in a previous Le Mans Ultimate DLC video. It will be something that the most hardcore fans won't like, to the point of lashing out verbal abuse, and there has been some. Regardless of hurt fifis, this needs to be voiced. LMU is early access, and providing DLC while in an early access program, especially in the context of a company like MSG, is not something that goes down very well with the good chunk of the player base, for good reasons that happen all around in gaming. To be fair, it's not something that I like as well, but there are attitudes coming from Studio 397 that makes this DLC qualify better. And as such, in my opinion, something to pay attention to LMU, even if the DLC situation is not something to your taste. So let's start. In reality, this video is not just about the DLC, but also about the accompanying update, which is in reality, at least in my opinion, more important than the DLC itself. You can really forego the DLC and you'll get the update improvements. If I had to define this update somehow, it is essentially about making Le Mans Ultimate a good product rather than just a good sim. Oftentimes in sim racing, both are mistaken as the same, but they are absolutely not. The DLC anyways is £6, €7, or $7.50 American for two cars, the Aston Martin Vantage AMR LM GT3 and the Porsche 911 GT3R LM GT3. This update comes with a free car as well, the Ford Mustang LM GT3, for those of you who like to say, what the fuck is a kilometer? So we get two cars at a really good price and a free one as well without any BOP shenanigans seen elsewhere. Much like the free McLaren was last December, really good car, you can still run with it, and it was free. If the cars are important, and they will be important to a lot of you, I think this update is more important than the cars. Let's start with the user interface. A working, nice to look at user interface in a sim racing game. Are they mad? The user interface has been optimized once again. Now there's a little button at the top to go back to the main menu without seeing those stingers every time we change the menus. In the game, the user interface has also changed, with more information being presented without really any extra clutter. The user interface team has definitely cooked something at the level of a pastel de nata, and it is an absolute breath of fresh air to see a sim racing game with some level of interest in making the user experience having the same polish as a driving one. Devs, you really should take notes here. One interesting part of this update is now that there are a few variations to some tracks, adding extra layouts. Fuji, for example, will have the short corner that deletes the slow chicane. This is going to be actually pretty cool to use. Le Mans has the Mulsanne straight version with no chicanes, so for those of you who remember Forza 3 and Forza 4 multiplayer, I think you're going to have a blast here. And Spa-Francorchamps has a 24-hour variation with the longer pit and exit at Radion. This version will also have a bumped up pit number, so it's going to be pretty cool to actually run the SRO 24 hours in Le Mans Ultimate without paying for the license, but we also won't get the full content, but that's okay. There's a few more variations available in other tracks as well, so there's a little bit of everything. We have more variation into what we can do with the game. LMU also added tire warmers as an option for servers, which is pretty cool, or hot, but there's also a new tire model, or improved, that is, on the LM GT3s. Studios 397 has listened to the feedback about the tires and has done a few changes. Critically, what I felt was that the tires are far easier to warm up. With the warm-up lap, they will start coming to play far sooner with usable grip from the get-go, and within 2 or 3 laps, they are at an optimal level. So there's less of that hunting for grip or high C behavior at the start we've seen thus far, and we also get, I think, a more progressive sense of grip. The tires can also be pushed further, but there will be an incurred penalty if they are kept over its limit for too long as well. Eventually, these updates will also come to the hypercars too. This new tire model, or updated tire model, has changed for me Sunset at Sebring, where the bumps made in some cases feel like I was having a bit of RNG gameplay and playing with my luck where those bumps did upset not only the balance of the car, but sometimes even at low speeds made the car lose control. I've also felt that the issues that I've complained about last time in the previous DLC videos have somewhat disappeared or been mitigated. We're talking about here the low speed grip, and also, interestingly enough, the force feedback seems to be less vague at the center and at low speed. So the improvements in handling are positive, as are the improvements of the feeling of handling. Regarding the tire warmers or the layouts, a few of you will say, but WC doesn't have these warmers in layouts. And to that I will say, yeah, but those are fun, and fun is also good. You know, having fun in sim racing is something unheard of, apparently. Now, let's talk about the cars for a bit. I think, while good, they're not really the most important thing. We get 2 DLC cars, like I said, and a free one. So it can be said that this DLC is purely optional because most of the improvements are free, and you get the free car, and therefore, if you are uncomfortable with early access DLC thing, you get basically most of it except for the cars that are on DLC that, while are fantastic, at the end of the day, they are totally optional. And adding to this, the free car, the Mustang, is really, really good. The handling of all cars is fantastic, as were the last cars from the first GT3 DLC. The Mustang feels meaty and aggressive, with a bit of oversteer on throttle, a bit of understeer at entry. It reminds me somewhat of the Lexus RCF in Assetto Corsa Competizione. That means if you don't get the DLC, at least you'll be given something fantastic. The Porsche, though, is definitely my favorite. I don't like generally to drive Porsches in many sims, it's just really not my type of handling. This GT3R feels incredible, it's agile, turns on a dime, the rear helps out without having so much of a pendulum effect that is normally associated with the Porkers, so I actually like driving this. And as for the Aston Martin, it felt like it had some lazy handling. It's a weapon on a straight line, but it's really not the type of car I've selected based in the type of handling it has. So it means all the cars will have different flavors, and certainly, at least between the free GT3s, there's really something of everything. One last point about the update, it's going to be about the AI. The recordings for the B-roll you see in the background are made racing against the AI. In doing so, I've had so much fun driving against the bots. They're a bit weird in the grip they have from the start, and you always need to drop a little bit their skill, at least for me, around 94 to 98%. But once you get the good setting, holy hell they are good. They defend, so they read your intentions and loiter at the center or go on the inside, so you need to go around on the corner. They also try to attack, and they move in and out of a line to see if you are upset by it. And they also have great racecraft, so that means they don't try to hit you on every case. That sometimes they do hit you, but that's kind of normal, it happens in real life as well. So what you see here is a very fun, very organic AI, so that means LMU is working quite well in single player as well. Though a few other smaller annoyances still persist, like the screen still hanging for a bit when coming back to the pits and other small FPS hiccups here and there. But overall, the experience is actually pretty good, and since the launch of the GT3 DLCs, I haven't really touched iRacing for anything other than doing some testing with wheelbases. The driving experience is just so much better in LMU than iRacing that even when going back to it, it's hard to get my head around the iRacing handling and strange tire model. So that leads me to my last point. That could be a whole video, and in reality I'm doing a whole video in this topic as well, so subscribe. Le Mans Ultimate devs decided to make good software rather than just centering themselves in a sim part, then not providing a good user experience. Only if we could have this before in rFactor 2. Because of that, LMU at this stage could be argued that the early access phase feels like almost released software. Even so, it is highly unlikely that a good portion of the player base will ignore past motorsports games misgivings, if you can remember what the mess NASCAR Ignition was, and want to buy the DLC because of that. Myself, if I wasn't sent this DLC code, I would buy this DLC just like I did with the first GT3 pack. Even with all my criticisms that came out in the video with the DLC, and they were relevant and needed, I ended up enjoying the driving and praising the positives from December onwards, because before that, the software part was just too much in the way of enjoying the sim. In short, LMU, despite the early access, is actually in a pretty good state. This update is cleaning a lot of the mess that is early access, and the DLC is really well priced, while at the same time not needed because they provide an excellent car for free. Let me know in the comments what you think about this DLC, about the cars, and the state of LMU.